For those who have tuned in since the very beginning, you probably already know this, but for those who are brand new to the channel, there's no doubt that my favorite video game series compilation of all time is hands down the Namco Museum. Though I don't mean the more recent Namco Museum for Switch. I'm actually referring back to the original Namco Museum, released in the mid-90s for the PlayStation. Originally released as a 5-volume compilation, this is by no means the first video game compilation series, but I would argue it's the most ambitious, doing things that were never done before. Not only did it make use of 3D design at a time when it was all the rage, but the series actively grew with each new volume after the next. Not only were the games well designed, since arcade ROM emulation was still impossible with the given hardware, but there was so much love and detail that centered around these games, and the museum mode was to thank. The music, the details, even the stuff only long-term fans would recognize. And to see these games brought to life in this museum room, this was the pinnacle of what game compilations should be. Plus, this was the first time some games were ever seen in America, as some were only ever released in Japan, including my personal favorite arcade game, The Legend of Valkyrie. Taken for granted back then, all of this disappeared in favor of skipping the appetizers for the main meal. In this case, ditching the museum mode for just the games. And the rest of the series was nothing more than your basic compilation series, ever since the release for the N64 going all the way forward back to the Nintendo Switch. All these games just felt the same after a while, and did very little besides adding game after game, to a point where it felt like that the quantity was more important than the quality. And though this isn't quite the same today, I would still argue that the Namco Museum is nothing more than a trademark name that's simply used for profits. And today's exception is no different, because today we're going hands-on with something that I never thought would actually have the Namco Museum name. With that in mind, what's going on, Forgotten Nation? I'm your host, FG, and today we're going hands-on with Namco Museum Arcade's Greatest Hits. This was a single LP released by Spacelab9 back in 2018. The version I have here is considered the standard version, which is considered a splattered pixelated design. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. But there was many other limited versions that came out around the same time. Some less so than the splattered design, including a version based on PAC-MAN, Galaga, and even Splatterhouse. The last name being very important as we're going to talk about this one. But anyways, the Namco Museum LP is exactly what it is. It's a record that's based on several different arcade games based on Namco's legacy, some of which are very iconic such as PAC-MAN, Galaga, Dig Dug, but there's even some older ones that you may not even know, and part of that is what makes the Namco Museum so ambitious. For example, I give props to those that might know the name Gaplus, The Return of Ishtar, and even Splatterhouse to an extent, because not every game actually made it here in America, especially a game like Return of Ishtar, which only came out in America back in Volume 4 of the Namco Museum. That's how important it was when it came out in the mid-90s. Games that we've never seen in America did finally come over. And although the game itself is considered outdated by today's standards, it's always going to have a place in my heart for the nostalgia it brings back. But that's the game series. Let's talk about the LP. And first things first, you're going to notice with the design of the outer sleeve is that it's not entirely solid. As a matter of fact, with the inner sleeve and a special art book we'll talk about in just a moment, you'll notice that you can actually change the front of the sleeve from PAC-MAN, Galaga, Dig Dug, and Mappy. And this is really cool for collection purposes. If you really want to show off your favorite game, it's just a lot of fun. It's a really fun sleeve. My only complaint is that it kind of scares me when I'm putting this away on the shelf because I feel like it's going to tear this side here. Apart from that, love the design. Everything you know and love is front and center. With that in mind, let's keep going. And we're going to talk about the art book, because the art book is really cool. This is just a small little book that's got different marquees, as well as different looks of games that are featured in the vinyl. From, of course, Dragon Buster, Sky Kid, Tower Druaga, Xevious, Gaplus, Bosconian. It's all here, and even small details such as the composer, the amount of players that can play it, the release date, even the controls. There's some fun little details here that I didn't think they would add. A lot of fun, I'm glad they did. And overall, it just makes for a really good art book. Just be able to have stuff like this shown off is really cool. You probably noticed by now, but this was definitely made as a collector's piece. Because, honestly, the biggest flaw with the Namco Museum vinyl has to be the music. But first things first, let's show it off. This is the Splatter pixelated design. Really cool. I love the colors popping. It definitely brings it out. Well worthy of a collector's piece worth showing off your love for arcade games or even just Pac-Man. A lot of fun here. A lot of fun. But now let's talk about the music. The biggest problem? It's not music. So, I'm no stranger to this kind of format. This is known as an ambient soundtrack. Think of it, for example, the rain sounds that your alarm clock makes when you're trying to wake up in the morning or you're just trying to sleep at night. This is essentially what it is. The audio is nothing more than gameplay from these different arcade games. Though I would be lying if I said it was just the gameplay, because some of the games featured on here is actual music. For example, one of my personal favorites, the Sky Kid March. You have the main theme from the Tower of Druaga, or even the Cathedral theme from Splatterhouse. So there is stuff on here that is worth listening to, if you're able to get to it. Because a majority of the soundtrack, including the front side, which is displayed as the first player side, really is just gameplay sounds. And it really doesn't offer that much in terms of re-listenability. If that's an actual term. I'll coin it. But anyways, we're going to leave the rest of this video here to some of the different sounds of the vinyl. So with that in mind, let's take a listen.
off. Alert, alert. Alert, alert. Locked off. Alert.
Alright, this was a listen to some of the various different music of the vinyl. There are some that I did skip, however. For example, there is the ending theme to Splatterhouse, as well as some more music such as the high score screen from Dig Dug. But this is all the games that are featured on the vinyl. And as you've noticed, yeah, there's a lot of gameplay to it. So with that in mind, do I hate this vinyl? Yes and no. I do think that it could have been a little more ambitious. For example, my favorite video game series of all time has some of the best arrangements of the different games. Besides, did you know that the Pac-Man theme is actually the theme they used for Pac-Man Versus? Or even the arrangements, for example, say Galaga Dig Dug from the Namco Museum. Now I know this is probably just nostalgia blindness talking, but I just feel like they could have done a lot more than just gameplay. And for the themes that are actual themes, the Mappy theme, the Sky Kid theme, Tower Druaga, they're great, and they're definitely worth listening to, especially the midsection of the Rolling Thunder theme. So there's plenty to love here with this vinyl. I just wish that there was more to it though, because gameplay is something, but what really makes music is music. And to have the Namco Museum name, there was a lot different source material they could have pulled from. But this is the final result. Though I will leave this on a bit of a somber note. So a lot of the stuff in this vinyl is based on arcade sounds. And when you really think about it, the arcade age is over. And when you really put into perspective, I'm sure there's going to be many people that may never get to experience what it's like to walk inside an arcade and get to hear what it's like to have all the machines going off at the same time. Or to have people playing the arcade games, for example. It's pretty sad to think about it that the days come where no one will ever get to know what it was like to have walked in an arcade in the 80s or the 90s. I was very fortunate as a kid to be able to walk into an arcade when I was very small, just before the prime came where everyone was starting to turn to the home console markets. I was very little, so it's still very vague. I do remember how the tokens had Pac-Man on them, and I was very fortunate to get to experience something that was near the end. And even as in more recent times, getting to see, there was a local arcade that there used to be, but it did close down for reasons even I don't know anymore. But just to understand that, one, arcades are not the same as they used to be. And two, I don't think there will ever be an experience like it again. But to be able to go back to that nostalgia of what it's like to hear these games in action is pretty cool. But if I'm really being honest, it's much better if you're playing the games instead of listening to the games. But that's just my perspective on it. Overall, the Namco Museum vinyl is a great collector's piece. Just don't expect to get much ear music out of it. But for the themes that are on there, they're a lot of fun. I'm glad they were preserved in a medium such as vinyl. And it's crazy to think that vinyl has had such a comeback as of recent. It really is crazy. But that in mind, that's going to do it for this video. If you like the format, be sure to let me know in the comments and leave a like down below. I definitely have more I want to do in the future, but it's up to you guys to let me know if something's got to change or to keep it as it is. And that in mind, I'll see you guys in the next video. So with that in mind, play me out.